You're a royal doctor in Madrid's Grand Palace, and the year's 1834. The king is no more, but your duty is far from done. You've been summoned to the secluded quarters of the late Ferdinand VII for a task so strange, so unimaginable, it makes you question your very grip on reality. The Queen Regent, Maria Cristina, stands before you, tears glistening in her eyes, with a request that turns your blood to ice. Your hands quiver as you near the velvet-draped bed where Ferdinand lies. Even lifeless, the man who ruled with terror for decades seems to sneer from beyond. Yet it isn't his face that grips your attention. It's a hidden thing beneath the sheets, the source of so many rumors, fears, and hushed conversations. The monstrous part of him that haunted his life as much as his tyranny, suspicion, and betrayals, Ferdinand VI's infamous, grotesquely large and bizarrely shaped genitals. As you begin the preservation procedure, your thoughts drift to the tales whispered among courtiers, accounts of tailored pillows, crying brides, and desperate measures to create an heir despite the burden of biology. You're not just conserving flesh. You're capturing the physical metaphor of a reign that was itself distorted, overwhelming, and ruinous. To grasp Ferdinand's story, you must recognize the curse that followed his birth, not one of sorcery, but of genetic corruption. Generations of intermarriage among Spanish royals had created a bloodline riddled with disorders. Ferdinand, born in El Escorial on October 14, 1784, was the offspring of Charles IV and Maria Louisa of Parma, both descended from the same twisted family tree. The damage was inescapable, and Ferdinand bore its cost in the most humiliating way imaginable. From a young age, it was clear something was horribly amiss. His genitalia began developing in ways that baffled even seasoned physicians. By adolescence, palace doctors whispered in horror at the royal abnormality. Preserved medical notes hidden in secret archives described it clinically, yet with evident dread. One physician noted, "His Majesty is afflicted with an organ so wildly disproportionate and oddly formed that conjugal activity may prove perilous." Another wrote with less restraint, "It resembles a billiard cue, thin at the root, broad as a clenched fist at the end, and long enough to serve as a cane." The psychological damage was immense. In a society where refined masculinity was measured by classical ideals, where smaller meant nobility and elegance, Ferdinand's oversized deformity was a mark of freakishness. His shame became his obsession. His parents were no help. Charles IV preferred hunting to governing, and Maria Louisa paraded her affair with Godoy, Spain's puppet master, without shame. Ferdinand, watching from the shadows, learned early that power lay not in love or loyalty, but in dominance and fear. The shame of his body compounded this lesson. The palace crackled with gossip. Servants laughed in corners, noblemen traded jokes, and foreign diplomats sent reports of the royal affliction back home. Ferdinand came to see every smile as mockery, every compliment as veiled insult. And sometimes he was right. As he aged, his tutors noticed his growing cruelty. He became suspicious, vindictive, and quick to punish. A teenage page who caught a glimpse of him unclothed was not simply dismissed. He was flogged, and his family exiled. The message was clear. No one could witness the prince's disgrace and live freely. When the time came to marry, the reality of Ferdinand's situation grew unavoidable. Dr. Francisco Flores, the king's personal physician, documented it in hidden journals. He wrote that the organ was so distorted in shape and girth that normal intimacy was not only unlikely, it was dangerous. To address this, palace craftsmen were instructed to build conjugal supports, intricate cushions, and devices to make intimacy physically possible. But this only scratched the surface. Ferdinand became obsessed with so-called cures, exotic potions, ancient remedies, and charlatans who promised miracles. He drank powdered pearls, rhino horn, and herbal concoctions, hoping to either shrink his grotesque endowment or enhance its function. None of it worked. The king's desperation made him a constant target for frauds and mystics. In 1802, Ferdinand wed his first cousin, Princess Maria Antonia of Naples. A beautiful and bright young woman, she arrived in Madrid full of romantic ideas and hope. She had no idea what awaited her. On their wedding night, strange equipment was brought to the bedchamber, oils, props, and custom cushions. When Ferdinand disrobed, Maria Antonia screamed in horror. Witnesses later said she cried, "Monster, monster," and tried to flee the room. What followed was more medical than marital. Doctors explained to the trembling princess what was expected. She was sedated with laudanum, and their first attempt at consummation began, a mechanical and traumatic ordeal for both. Their intimacy was repeated many times, with doctors, aids, and rituals. Each time left the queen more broken. She became addicted to laudanum. The king grew colder, angrier. 2 pregnancies ended in tragedy. The first, a miscarriage early on. The second, nearly full term, nearly killed her. By 1807, Maria Antonia was dead at 21. The official word, fever and weakness. But everyone in the palace knew better. She had been consumed by sorrow, drugs, and trauma. And some whispered she had been poisoned, not by enemies, but by the king himself. Within weeks, Ferdinand was already searching for a new bride. Behind his grief, a shadow of relief. The doctors, meanwhile, scrambled for new methods, new machines, new miracles to manage the monstrous truth of the man they served.